Okay. Way. We have a Chedvav. Excuse me. One who says, "This is my son," is believed. If he said, "This is my brother," he is not believed, but he must share his portion with him. If he died, the possessions return to their place, and the possessions fell to him from another source, his brothers inherit with him. If one died and a will was found tied to his thigh, it is void. If he granted title to someone else with it, whether from the heirs or not, his words are upheld. Zion. One who signs over his property to his sons must write from today and after death. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says he may not, he need not. If one signs over his possessions to his son to take effect after his death, the father cannot sell them because they are signed over to the son, and the son cannot sell them because they are in the possession of the father. If the father went and sold them, they are sold until his death. And the son went off and went and sold them, the buyer has no share in them until the father dies. The father may detach produce and give to each whomever he wishes, and what produce he leaves over detached from the field belongs to his heirs. If he leaves older and younger sons, the older ones are not supported by the expense at the expense of the younger ones. No, the younger ones fed at the expense of the older ones. Rather they divide equally. If the older one marries, the younger one may marry. If the younger one said, "We will marry just as you married," we do not listen to them. Rather, whatever their father gave them, he gave. If he leaves older and younger daughters, the older daughters are not supported at the expense of the younger ones, nor the younger ones fed at the expense of the older ones. Rather, they divide equally. If the older ones married, the younger ones may marry. If the younger ones said, "We will marry just as you married," we do not listen to them. This is the stringency of daughters over sons, that the daughters are fed at the expense of the sons, but they are not fed at the expense of the daughters. Okay.
All right. Misha Mace. So a guy dies and he's got sons and daughters. We've seen this Mishnah before, actually, in Kesubos. There was a whole section of Admon and all the different things that Admon said. And this is one of the things that Admon said, which actually there was quoted out of context because there we were just collecting all the sayings of Admon. But here, this is in the context of Yerusha, which is exactly what Bava Basra is talking about. Okay. So he's got sons and daughters. If there's a large estate, then the sons inherit the bulk, and they just have to pay out a stipend to their sisters who are unmarried. Right? So in order to sustain them. Right? So the sons get the bulk of the estate, and the daughters have to make do with the stipend. And the chasim muatin, however, it's a small estate. Abanos izono, then the daughters have first bite at the estate because there's an obligation to give them their stipend, and if there's not enough in the estate to give them their stipend, and for the boys to get anything, habarim yishalu ala pesachim, then unfortunately the boys are the ones who have to go begging door to door in order to make ends meet because they have to feed their sisters before they can take their Yerusha. It says, how can this be that because they're males they lose out? If the rule is that men take precedence in Yerusha, then why should they lose out just because it's a small estate?
Oh, right.
Right. Amar Rabban Gamliel roe ani es divrei Admon, and Rabban Gamliel says that's a fair point that Admon makes, but even so, it's the halacha is as was stated in the Mishnah. It's not like Admon or Rabban Gamliel, and it may just be that they accepted the halacha, but they were just amazed that such a halacha would exist. Anyway, that is the halacha. Mishnah base. Hiniach banim ubanos v'tumtum. Okay, so now added into the mix of his Yorshim of boys and girls is one of indeterminate sex, a tumtum, non-binary. Well, that's actually an interesting thing because the discussion about non-binary was already in the Mishnah because it was Rabbi Yehuda. It was. I think it was Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, it's at the one volume that I don't have is Ryan because it's at the end there that we're talking about the tumtum. and one of the Tanaim says that it's that a there we go. It's Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. He says that a tumtum is not a zachar, is not a nekeva, it's a bria b'pnei atzma, non-binary. So Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was the first person to come out with the concept of a non-binary, but there because it was biologically non-binary. Okay. But so therefore Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says that the tumtum it doesn't do any rush at all because he's he, she, it, whatever his pronouns are, is not he's not in the getter of man or woman in order to be a Yorish. Okay, but that's not the halacha. So getting back to the meaning of our Mishnah. So he's got sons and daughters and a tumtum. The general opinion of the tumtum is that it is indeterminate. It's either a male or a female. You know, the general opinion is that gender is binary. You're either a male or you're a female, and in the case of a tumtum, we just don't know what you are. Okay, so in a safek. So if you've got a large estate where the boys are getting the lion's share, then the boys will say, go and take your stipend like the rest of your sisters, because prove that you're a boy in order to take a share of the Yerusha. Otherwise, act like a girl and take your stipend like the rest of the girls. And however, in a case where the estate is small, and then the girls say to him, "Get out of here! You prove that you're a girl before you take a stipend. Otherwise, go with the rest of the boys and beg from door to door." So the tumtum is in a disadvantaged position because of the safek, because he can't prove that he's a boy when it's advantageous for him to do so. Can't prove that he's a girl when it's advantageous for him to do so. So so whatever case, he takes the smaller portion. Omer im telev ishti zachar yitol maneh. So now here comes a guy who before his Yerusha is divided up, he sees a child, his wife is pregnant, and he's on his deathbed, and he says, look, if this baby is a boy, then let the baby take 100. And before his wife gives birth, he dies, but his wife gives birth to a boy, not almaneh. So he takes 100 before the estate is divvied up, because it's taken as if there was a tzavah of on the father's deathbed to give him 100. And even though a fetus is davashe lo ba'al olam, it hasn't yet been born. Nonetheless, because it's a father wanting to give a gift to his child, it's taken as given before the Yerusha is divided up. In Nakeva Masayim, so similarly, if he says if the child that my wife is carrying is a girl, she should get 200. Now, why does it say 100 for a boy or 200 for a girl? The Mishna is saying that it's just showing the natural way of the world, that a father sees the girl as more defenseless and needing more, and therefore he leaves her more. Okay. Nekeva Masayim, Yalda Nekeva, Noteres Masayim. Then the same thing applies, that even if after the father dies, the child is born and it's a girl, she gets 200. Im Zachar Mane Im Nekeva Masayim. So in this case, the father says, if the child is a boy, then it should get 100, and if it's a girl, she gets 200. Yalda Zachar Nekeva, and his wife gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Then each of them gets what the father said. Before, and again, this is before the estate is divided up. Yalda Tumtum. What happens if his wife gives birth to a tumtum in this case? Eino notel, doesn't take anything. This is according to the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that a tumtum is a bria b'pnei atzma. So it's not a boy, it's not a girl, doesn't get anything. Okay. Imamar kol ma sheteled ishti yitol hareze yitol. But if he said whatever my wife gives birth to should have 100, 100 should then it doesn't matter if it's a tumtum. It's just a child, so then it takes. Vim ein sham yoresh elahu, yoresh is a kol. And if that's the only Yorish, then it didn't make a difference, because whether he gets the money now or whether he gets it after the father's estate is divided up, he's the lone heir, and therefore everything goes to him anyway. Okay.
Hey, knock it off. She scratches under her chin, gets redder and redder. Okay.
So he dies and he leaves older and younger sons. So now the older sons are, streetwise and know the market and whatever, and they see the father's estate, and they've got authority to invest and do whatever they want with the money. And the inheritance increases because they invested smartly. This is before they divided up. Then the whole pot gets enlarged, and all of the Yorshim take a share in the increase. Yeah, okay. Im amru re'u ma sheniach lanu abba harei anu osim v'ochlin. Okay, so what's the case over here is that they're sitting waiting for the Yerusha to be divided up, and whatever the delays are the delays, and say, listen, we don't want to sit letting the money grow idle. We know what to do with this money. We want to earn money off it. So they give notice in front of Beis Din, in front of three people, say, listen, we are going to do trade with our share of the inheritance even before we've received our share of the inheritance, and they go off and do their trading and make money. If that's the case, that they gave notice that they're doing it for themselves, then they're the ones who keep the profit. Okay, so, and the same thing goes for a woman who increases who improves the property, and it's an interesting case, this one, because it's not such an easy case to resolve. Like, what's the case where the woman is where the wife is, Isha is usually, when you talk about that, that's a wife, because like if you look at it, if it was talking about daughters who are inheriting, it would have said banos.
Right.
This is an Isha as a wife. So when does a wife inherit a husband? So that here the Gemara has to come on to a rather interesting corner case, where you've got two brothers, Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven marries Shimon's daughter. Okay, so Reuven's married. So Shimon's got a lot of daughters, and Reuven marries the oldest of them. Let's just say. So Reuven marries this daughter. We'll call her Dinah. Okay, and then Reuven dies without any children. So who inherits Reuven is Shimon, but Shimon had also died. So now if Shimon is dead, then who inherits from Shimon? His children. So that means that Reuven's Yerusha goes to all of Shimon's children, including, as it happens,
not to the wife,
including his wife. His wife inherits not because it's his wife, but because it's his brother's daughter. But being the wife, she's in an advantageous position because she's been living in his house, and she's able to buy and sell and whatever with whatever's in the estate. And so similarly, if she's been trading and doing whatever with Reuven's property in the estate, then it goes into the general pot and gets divided equally among the sisters. If she says, now look, this is what my husband left me. I want to do trade with this. I want to make money with money. Then once she's given notice in front of Beis Din that she's doing this for herself, then she's allowed to keep the profits for herself. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let's do some Chazara. Hey Ches.
Hey Ches. If one sold wine or oil to another and appreciated or depreciated, if it happened before the measure was filled, it belongs to the seller. Once the measure is filled, it belongs to the seller. Nope, that's what we're doing. Once the measure was filled, it belongs to the seller. Once the measure was filled, it belongs to the buyer. There's a mistake here, I think.
No, sorry, if it's before the measure is filled.
Okay.
Until the
All right.
measure is filled, and then whatever, and after the measure is filled.
If there was a middleman between them and the barrel broke, it broke for the middleman. If he is obligated to let 3 drops drip out for him. If he turned it over and drained it, it belongs to the seller. A storekeeper, however, is not obligated to let 3 drops drip out. The Yehuda says only on the eve of Shabbos at dusk is he exempt. If someone sent his son to a storekeeper with a puncheon in his hand and he measured out for him an isser's worth of oil and gave him an isser, if it broke the jar or lost the isser, the storekeeper is liable. Rabbi Yehuda exempts him because he sent him for that purpose. The sages agree with Rabbi Yehuda that when the jar is in the hand of the child and the storekeeper measured into it, the storekeeper is exempt. A wholesaler must clean his measures once in 30 days and a householder once in 12 months. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says the reverse is true. A storekeeper must clean his measure twice a week, wipe his weights once a week, and clean the scales for every weigh. Okay.
Rav Metzia, Rav base.
If one hires craftsmen and they retract, they are at a disadvantage. If the hire retracts, if the hire retracts, he is at a disadvantage. Whoever deviates is at a disadvantage, and whoever retracts is at a disadvantage. One who rents a donkey to drive it on the mountain and he drives it in the valley, or in the valley and he drives it on the mountain, even if this is 10 mil and this is 10 mil, and he dies, and it dies, he is liable. If one rents a donkey to drive it on the mountain and he drives it in the valley, if it slips, he is exempt. But if he dies from the heat, he is liable. If he rents it to drive in the valley and drives in the mountain, if it slips, he is liable. But if he dies from the heat, he is exempt. If it dies because of the ascent, he is liable. One rents a donkey and becomes blind or sees from public service, he may say to him, that which is yours is before you. If he dies or breaks a leg, he is obligated to provide him with another donkey. If one rents a cow to plow in the mountains and he plows in the valley, if the coulter breaks, he is exempt. If he rents it to plow in the valley and he plows in the mountains, if the coulter breaks, he is liable to thresh beans. If he
No, he's
threshes,
liable. He's liable. He's not liable to thresh beans.
oh, okay. All right, maybe. If the coulter breaks, he is liable. To thresh beans and he threshes grain, he is exempt. To thresh grain and he threshes beans, he is liable because the beans are slippery. Okay. You always catch me. Okay. You're reading the Hebrew and I'm reading the English. Okay. Space. It was found buried in a heap or hanging from a tree or floating upon the water, they would not decapitate a calf as it is said in the land, implying that it was not buried in a heap, fallen, but not hanging from a tree in the field, but not floating upon the water. It was found near the border or near a city of which the majority are non-Jews, or near a city in which there are no court of law, they would not decapitate a calf. They do not measure except from a city in which there is a court of law. If it was found equidistant from 2 cities, the two bring 2 calves. These are the words of Eliezer. And Yerushalayim is exempt from the right of the decapitated calf. If its head was found in one place and its body in another place, we bring the head to the body. These are the words of Reb Eliezer. Reb Akiva says the body is brought to the head. From where would they measure? Reb Eliezer says from his navel. Reb Akiva says from his nose. Reb Eliezer says Elazar ben Yaakov says from the place that he became a corpse, his neck. Okay.
Yama.
Hey. If he shall go out to the altar which is before Hashem, this refers to the golden plated altar in the holy. He started to downward. Where did he start? From the northeast corner to the northwest corner, to the southwest corner, in the southwest corner. At the place from which he started to down on the outer altar for a regular sin sacrifice, he would finish on the inner altar. Reb Eliezer says he remained in his place and dabbed the blood, and all of them he applied the blood from the bottom to the top, except for this one that was in front of him, upon which he applied the blood from the top to the bottom. He sprinkled upon the surface of the altar 7 times, and the remainder of the blood he would pour upon the western base of the outer altar. But those sacrifices of the outer altar he would pour upon the southern base. These and those mixed together in a canal and flowed out to the Kidron Valley. It was sold to the gardeners for fertilizer, and one is liable for unauthorized use of it. The entire Yom Kippur service that has been listed in sequence, if he advanced one service for another, he has accomplished nothing. For example, if he advanced the he-goat's blood before the ox's blood, he must again sprinkle from the he-goat's blood after sprinkling the ox's blood. And if he spilled blood before he finished the applications of the blood inside, he must bring other blood and he must again sprinkle inside from the beginning. The same is true for the sprinkling in the holy, and the same applies to the sprinkling on the golden altar, because each of them is a separate unit of atonement. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon say from where he broke off is from where he starts again. Okay.
Oktzin on the home stretch in Maseches Taros.
Okay. Anything that is a yad, but not a shomer, contracts tuma and conveys tuma. What is I'm sorry. What does that mean? Anything that is a yad but not a shomer. A yad is like an extension of the hand.
A yad is something that you can hold. It's a handle. Okay, so
right.
for example, the stalk of a fruit. You can pick up an apple by the stalk.
Right.
But it's not a shomer. A shomer is something like a skin, is like a peel, is a shomer. So
the peel guards.
Huh?
Are you saying that the peel guards the apple inside?
Yes, correct. It guards the fruit.
Okay.
So all right. So that's called a shomer. So if it's a yad, so what it's saying is if it's a yad, it's something that you can hold it by, but it's not a shomer. So think of apple stalk. Okay.
Right.
Mitame, umatame, v'lo mitzaref. So it can become tame, and it can convey tuma, but it doesn't join in. It doesn't join with the rest of the fruit in order to make the shear of the amount of a kabetza in order to become tame. Okay. Whereas shomer, the next sentence, the shomer apple pisha eno yad, whereas like the skin. So I think the peel of the orange even. Apple pisha eno yad, or an apple peel. Okay, eno yad, you can't hold it by that. Mitame umatame umitztaref. So that both becomes tame and conveys tuma and also joins. It joins into the quantity required.
Okay, well, it's interesting how I don't know the simple derivations of the words like yad and shomer and all, but there seems to be other definitions to it. Mm-hmm. All right, base. The roots of garlic, onion, and leek where they are moist, and the protrusion whether it is moist or dry, and the stalk that is directly opposite the food. The roots of lettuce, round radish, and oblong radishes, they are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda says the larger root of the radish combines, but its fibrous root does not combine. The roots of mint and rue and of field greens and garden greens, they are one uprooted in order to transplant them. And the spine of an ear of grain and the grain's covering, Reb Eliezer says also the dust covering, this contract tuma, convey tuma, and combine.
In other words, they're called a shomer. So when we see that they have all three aspects, that they become tame, convey tuma, and combine, that means that they're considered to be a shomer rather than a yad.
These contract tuma and convey tuma, but do not combine. The roots of garlic, onions, and leek when they are dry and the stalk is not directly opposite the food.
Right. So this is called a yad. Yeah.
When the hands of a grapevine branch, a hand's breadth on either side, the handle of the cluster of grapes, whether its length may be, and the tail of the cluster of one bared, and 4 handbreadths of the handle of the broom of the day palm, and these 3 handbreadths of the stalk of an ear of grain, and 3 handbreadths of the handle of all crops that are cut, and those crops which is not their norm to be cut, their handles and their roots, whatever their length may be, the bristles of ears of corn, these contract tuma and convey tuma, but do not combine. Okay.
But do not combine. Right. So again, that's yad. It's just a handle. So yeah, we're talking about the cluster of stalks. So again, you think about the stem that's
right.
Hold it by, but it doesn't. It's not a protection for the fruit.
We have the halakha in the kashrus about using an onion or a radish, as far as using the knife and stuff. Is that true for a leek also? A leek is like
davar charif. I'm not sure if leek is considered davar charif. I don't think so.
No, I never saw it that way, but I know it's like an onion, right?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, onion actually is kind of snuck into the davar charif category because it's not. The classic davar charif is the chiltis, the safatida. That's a very strong one, and radishes are a stronger flavor.
right.
But onions are actually not so much, and lemons are also very much a bit of argument about those. But whatever, that's a different subject. Okay, Ma'ila ala place.
Regarding meat of Kodesh Kadoshim that went out of the courtyard before the throwing of the blood on the altar, Reb Eliezer says it is subject to Me'ilah, and one is not liable on its account for pickle, Noseh or Tameh. Reb Kiva says it is not subject to Mila, and indeed one is liable on its account for pickle, Noseh, and Tameh. Reb Kiva says why, in the case of one who designated Katas offering and was then lost, and then he designated another in its place, and afterward the first one was found, and both are not standing, it is not so that this is just a blood that exempts from its meat, from Me'ilah. So too does its blood exempt the meat of the companion. Now, if the blood exempts the meat of the companion from Me'ilah, it is logical that they should exempt its own meat from Me'ilah. Regarding sacrificial parts of Kadosh Kelim that went out of the courtyard before the throwing of the blood on the altar, Reb Eliezer says they are not subject to Me'ilah, and one is not liable on their account for pickle, Noseh, or Tameh. Reb Akiva says they are subject to Me'ilah, and one is liable on their account for pickle, Noseh, or Tameh. The blood service of Kadosh Kadoshim affect the blood both leniently and stringently. But the blood service of Kadosh Kelim affects it only stringently. How so? Regarding Kodesh Kadoshim, before the throwing of the blood on the altar, the sacrificial parts and the meat are subject to Me'ilah. After the throwing of the blood, the sacrificial parts are still subject to Me'ilah, but the meat is not subject to Me'ilah. For both the sacrificial parts and for the meat, that is in that time, now one is now liable for pickle, Noseh, or Tameh. In the case of kosher kelim, it only affects the offering stringently. How so? Regarding kosher the kelim, before the throwing of the blood, neither sacrificial parts of the meat is subject to Me'ilah. After the throwing of the blood, the sacrificial parts are now subject to Me'ilah, but the meat is still not subject to Me'ilah. And for both the sacrificial parts and for the meat, one is now liable for pickle, Noseh, or Tameh. It emerges that the blood service of Kadosh Kadoshim affects the offering both leniently and stringently, but the blood service of Kadosh Kelim affects it only stringently.
Right, because so why is it it's more stringent with the Kochim Kalim, because when you designate a shlamim, there's no me'ilah on it, and from the moment you designated it until it comes to the base of mikdash, because it's something that you're ultimately going to eat. But once it's been shechted, then the certain parts of it that now are subject to me'ilah, those are the parts that are going on the mizbeach. Okay, but the rest of it is still not. Whereas somebody designates an animal for an olah, immediately there's me'ilah on this animal because it's all going onto the mizbeach. But once it gets, or let's rather say a chatas, because the person himself can't have it. It's all kodshei. Once it's been shechted and the blood's been thrown, now the meat is mutar for the kohanim, so there's no me'ilah on the meat, but the rest does. So that seems like a leniency then. That's the story of it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Have a lovely day.
See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.